Hello all, myself Jayakumar. Today I am going to present our final project presentation in the subject application and deployment of advanced analytics. And our professor name is Jamie Amprise and my project member is Nathaniel Gomez. And our project includes a study on COVID's effect in North America, the Caribbean and Central America. Coming to the introduction parts, everyone knows in 2020 the COVID-19 pandemic affected the world's supply chain. The pandemic resulted in manufacturing from China specifically to shut down due to severe COVID lockdown measures. These lockdowns, as well as COVID outbreaks in many manufacturing facilities, led to a shortage of supplies, including personal protective equipment, medicine, and computer chips. In this research, we studied how the United States and its neighboring countries manage the pandemic. This will help companies decide where to move their manufacturing by understanding the impact of the pandemic on different countries and how economic factors played a role. In this research, we used the data to answer two questions. Our first question was how did the deaths and case numbers of COVID-19 cases evolve through different waves of the pandemic in the United States and its neighboring countries? And the other one is to see how current COVID trends affect each country.
Hello, I am Nathaniel Gomez, and to give you guys some background, the COVID 19 pandemic caused manufacturing and the supply chain around the world to be disrupted. This created a shortage in goods around the world, especially with goods that were manufactured in China because of the strict lockdown measures. Today, many companies are looking to move their manufacturing to be closer to key markets instead of having all their manufacturing in one location. Currently, companies are investing in moving their manufacturing to the United States or a country that is close to the United States to avoid supply chain disruptions. Some companies want to relocate their manufacturing to countries in the Caribbean and Latin America due to low labor costs and trade agreements with the United States. These trade agreements are the USMCA, which is the United States, Mexico, and Canada's trade agreement, the U.S. Panama Trade Promotion, which is a trade agreement between the United States and Panama, and CAFTA-DR, which is a trade agreement between the Central American countries and the Dominican Republic. These trade agreements are influencing these companies to relocate their manufacturing to these countries. We also looked at the trade relations between some of the countries in the Caribbean, like Jamaica and the Bahamas, with the United Kingdom, as well as Cuba, which has a different situation because of the United States trade embargo. Because of that, Cuba is more isolated. So we decided to look into Cuba as well, just because of their unique situation, because of the isolation, because they are the only communist country in this region. We also decided that Cuba will be an important country to look at and compare how the COVID-19 pandemic affected Cuba, as well as countries in North America, Central America, and the rest of the Caribbean. From the literature that we read, we got some key insights. We learned that Latin America was hit hard by the COVID 19 pandemic with a death toll similar to Western Europe and the United States, despite having earlier and longer lockdowns and a much younger population. We learned that Honduras was above the world average and world median in COVID related deaths. Mexico at one point had 46,000 deaths, making it the third highest COVID related deaths in the world. The high death count and COVID cases hurt Mexico's economy early in the pandemic, causing 12 million people to drop out of the workforce. And then Cuba did more testing per confirmed case than any other country in the region, with 68.8 tests per confirmed case. Cuba also did comprehensive tracing for all positive cases.
And coming to the dataset overview, the dataset we used for our research is Our World in Data, a non-profit organization offering open access to global datasets on various issues. It includes COVID-19 information from different 207 countries. And in this data, the main data points are country name, continent, GDP per capita, extreme poverty, median age, population density, diabetes prevalence, total population, etc. And this data set enables analysis of COVID-19 impacts across different countries and helps forecast future trends based on current data. And coming to the methodology, after seeing how each country was affected, we then ran a decision tree to see whether or not moving a company to the country would be a safe investment or not. To do this, we used current trends of COVID cases by using sklearn in Python. We were able to create predictive models to test and train For the decision tree to connect our analysis, we decided to first study the pandemic in North America by dividing the countries up into three regions. The first region we labeled North America and it consists of United States, Canada, and Mexico. The second region we labeled Central America and it consists of Belize, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Panama. The third region we labeled the Caribbean and it consisted of Cuba, Jamaica, Bahamas, the Dominican Republic, and Haiti. Finally, we decided to create a predictive model to forecast future cases by using our current data.
For our analysis, we decided to study the case numbers throughout the pandemic. We did this by using our data to create line graphs showing the case numbers for each region for every 6 months. Based on our graph, we learned that there were two spikes in cases, an initial spike in 2021 and a higher spike in 2022. By 2022, every country in the region had reached its peak number of cases. After the peak, each country saw a reduction in case numbers and currently cases remain low in the region. We did the same type of analysis for COVID deaths. We decided to use the data to show us the COVID deaths for each region for every 6 months. By creating the bar graphs, we were able to gain some insights on how COVID affected each region. From this information, we learned that the United States saw a much higher number of COVID related deaths as compared to other countries. This could be because the United States has a much larger population than the other countries in the region. We also learned that Cuba had a higher COVID related deaths than any Caribbean country, despite conducting daily testing and contract tracing early on in the pandemic. In Central America, Guatemala has seen the highest COVID related deaths in the region. And even though most COVID cases peaked in 2022, deaths because of COVID were less in 2022. So when we compared the cases numbers and the deaths, by 2022 we had more cases, but we had less deaths. Predictive analysis. After analyzing COVID cases and deaths for each region, we decided to run a decision tree based on monthly COVID data for future investment. To do this, we create a decision tree model using our world in data COVID dataset. Using monthly data, we created a threshold that predicted if investment in that country was a safe investment or not. Based on our models, we predicted that investment would be safe for the United States and Mexico, but not so much for Honduras. For Honduras, out of 42 samples, only 19 samples were classified for investment and 23 were classified for do not invest. By using this decision tree model, we can see that Honduras is a riskier investment based off of monthly COVID data than the United States and Mexico. Forecasting models. Finally, we decided to use our COVID data to predict the number of COVID cases we will have next year. To do this, we used the Prophet library in Python. This library created a forecast of future COVID cases. This model is predicting a small spike in cases for the United States, Canada, Honduras, Cuba, and Mexico in the beginning of 2025. After the initial spike at the beginning of the year, cases will remain consistent to the current levels. So as we can see here, we can see that there are small spikes for each country, but it will remain kind of at the same level it's at currently. Conclusion. In conclusion, that the health of a country's workforce is very important to the global supply chain. If a country's workforce is disrupted by high cases of workers getting COVID or a high number of deaths due to COVID, the business or supply chain might be affected. This is why this study was important. Although COVID data shouldn't be the only factor when considering where to establish a manufacturing center, this analysis should be used to understand the challenges each country for each country in this region has with COVID. Thank you.